The Nature and Power of Language by Brooke Henry, Shay Kazemi, Madison Miller, Amanda Chen, and Sloan Elmasian. Here is a graphic with some key components about language. In this video, we will be talking about nature and power of language. First, we will explain how symbols and linguistic rules allow people to achieve shared meaning. Did you know that humans speak about 10,000 dialects, yet they all share some of the same characteristics of language? Language is defined as a collection of symbols, governed by rules, and used to convey messages between individuals. The first theme of our video that we will talk about is that language is symbolic. Words are symbols, meaning that they are arbitrary constructions that represent our thoughts. We name things in the world, such as a book or a chair, and use symbols to characterize things. The next theme is that meanings are in people, not in words. This means that meaning is not in language itself, but how we make sense of them. For example, the word feminism can mean very different things to different people. One person could have a very positive connotation of the word, and another could be very negative. One word does not have a universal definition, so meanings do not rely in words. On the right is a comic which helps explain this. It shows that the same words do not always cause the same interpretation.
Language is also governed by rules. The four rules are phonological rules, syntactic rules, semantic rules, and pragmatic rules. Phonological rules are linguistic rules governing how sounds are combined to form words. However, not all words that are spelled the same sound the same. For example, in the US, we pronounce this word as double. However, in France, they pronounce this word as double, although it is spelled the same. Another example of this is that in the US, we pronounce this word as conclusion. However, in Spain, they pronounce this word as conclusión, although once again it is spelled the same. Syntactic rules govern the ways in which symbols can be arranged as opposed to the meanings of those symbols. For example, in Germany, it's perfectly acceptable to structure a sentence as the following: "Have you the cookies brought?" However, we would never say that in the US. Instead, we would say, "Did you bring the cookies?" Technology has led to new English syntactical rules. For example, when texting, you might abbreviate longer sayings such as "gotta go," "talk to you later," "on my way," and "oh my gosh," just a few short characters instead. Semantic rules govern the meaning of language as opposed to its structure. For example, symbols such as these are universally known to mean female and male. If we didn't have universal meanings for the following symbols, it would lead to a lot of confusion. Semantic rules allow us all to stay on the same page. Pragmatic rules govern how people use language in everyday interaction. Geoffrey Leach, in his book Principles of Pragmatics, defines pragmatics as how language is used in communication. He argues that we cannot really understand the nature of language itself unless we understand pragmatics. He also says that pragmatics differ from grammar in that it is essentially goal-directed and evaluative, whereby the speaker is seen as trying to achieve his aims within constraints opposed by principles and maxims of good communication behavior. But what even is good communication behavior exactly? Well, each individual defines this in different ways, depending on these three things. The first is their self-concept, the second is their perceived relationships with others, and the third is their cultural background. These three aspects determine how each individual interprets pragmatic rules. It also explains why different individuals find controversial quotes, such as these, as either highly offensive or acceptable. Opinions about the appropriateness of speech are grounded in pragmatic rules.
Language shapes attitudes. Although we mainly associate language as a way of satisfying basic functions such as describing ideas and solving problems, it also influences others and reflects our attitudes in subtle ways depending on how we use it. According to Thompson's article, The Power of Language, language has an immense power and its impact depends entirely on how we use it. For example, names shape the way others think of us, how we view ourselves, and how we act. When it comes to voting, it's often possible to predict who will win an election because voters tend to favor names that are more simple, easy to pronounce, or rhythmic. Also, when it comes to children, names play a role in shaping and reinforcing their personal identity. Naming a baby after a family member can create a connection between the child and his or her namesake. It can also reveal cultural identity as some groups name their children with cultural specific names. Such names are a symbol of pride and solidarity. Another way in which language shapes attitudes is through status. There are several factors that combine to create positive or negative impressions: accent, choice of words, speech rate, and the apparent age of a speaker. For the most part, speakers with a standard dialect are viewed as more competent and more self-confident than those without such dialect. The inability of a speaker to use standard dialect fluently may be seen as less intelligent, less professional, less capable, less socially acceptable, and less employable than those who speak more standard English.
The power of language to shape attitudes influences how we perceive entire groups of people. The incorrect use of the pronoun he to refer to both men and women can have damaging results. For example, on a television program, a 5-year-old hears a teacher describing her way of teaching by saying, "You take each child where you find him. You watch what he is interested in." A 5-year-old then asks her mother if only boys go to that school. What can the mother tell her daughter about why a child in any generalization is always he rather than she? How does a 5-year-old comprehend the generic personal pronoun? These are questions that arise from a situation regarding incorrect use of pronouns. A way to easily avoid these types of situations is to use non-sexist language. For example, use humankind, humanity, human beings, human race, or people instead of mankind. Additionally, names have been used throughout history to stigmatize certain groups. By using derogatory terms to label people, the outgroup is set apart and pictured in an unfavorable light. For example, we can see the process of stigmatization when labels are placed on Jewish people in Nazi Germany. In addition to shaping attitudes, language also reflects attitudes. Feelings of control, attraction, commitment, responsibility, and more are all reflected in the way we use language. Language patterns add to or detract from a speaker's ability to influence others, and that reflect how a speaker feels about his or her control over a situation. Tentative speech may convey the wrong impression entirely. In employment interviews, powerful speech results in a more positive attribution of competence and employability than speech perceived to be lacking in confidence or powerless. In general, speakers who communicate with confidence and avoid powerless mannerisms are typically rated as more competent, dynamic, and attractive than those who hedge or stammer.
The next theme is affiliation. Language can be a way of building and demonstrating solidarity with others. We change the way we talk and present ourselves depending on our audience. Researchers define a linguistic accommodation as convergence, or changing one's speaking style to another person, usually who is desirable or has a higher status. We experience convergence both online and face-to-face. Examples of affiliation through technology are emojis and abbreviations. Another linguistic strategy is divergence, in which speakers emphasize differences between their communicative styles and that of others in order to create distance. This can help create credibility and professionalism. In their book, Convergence and Divergence in Language Contact Situations, House and Braunmuller explain how the translation of languages triggers convergence and divergence between the two languages. The last theme is responsibility. Language reveals how much the speaker accepts responsibility. Using I instead of it and you show that the speaker takes responsibility. We hope you learned a lot about the nature and power of language. Thank you for watching.